and welcome to a special edition of Liberty Nation Swamponomics videocast. I'm Andrew Moran, Ellen's economics correspondent. Is the Biden administration creating a formula of embarrassment? In today's economy, everything is an emergency, from baby formula shortages to record high gasoline prices. Were these problems manufactured by the government, and can the government resolve these issues? President Joe Biden is once again blaming everyone else, while Congress is passing legislation that makes him feel good. But whether this will lead to lasting solutions or not remains to be seen. To help us mine the field and extract a nugget of truth, please welcome Liberty Nation's editor-at-large, James Fight. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
So the first question I have is, and I'm pretty sure most parents do, can parents stop worrying about feeding their babies? Are there any positive developments happening right now in the United States?
Well, there have been some positive developments, but it's certainly not time to quit worrying yet. And look, it may not be time. Well, okay. Eventually, it will be time to quit worrying about the immediate, where's the next meal coming from? Because that is, when you have small children, and especially an infant that depends on formula, that is the primary concern. Nothing else matters beyond that, until that need is met. But as far as just the general worry, I don't know that we're going to be able to stop worrying, generally speaking, anytime soon, because what we're seeing now is a symptom, not the underlying cause. But there have been, on a more positive note, there have been positive developments. The Biden administration is talking about how they were flying in formula from Europe, and I believe the first shipment from Germany landed a couple of days ago, 75,000 pounds worth. That should be enough for at least 500,000 bottles, and that's a lot of full little baby bellies, right? So there is positive development, but it's still taking time. It was just a day or so ago, my wife went to Walmart to get Pedialyte and saw that, hey, the formula shelves are still bare. So but you think about it, when the shipment of formula lands, it then has to be processed and then trucked to shelves and all that stuff. So I mean, it's no industry turns on a dime, unfortunately, with our needs. But again, positive development. And hey, another positive development, that whole pandemic baby boom never happened. So at least there's that.
Yeah, the FDA, they said recently that they were going to import more baby formula, and they would give priority to companies that could easily adapt or show that they're in compliance with U.S. safety standards. So that's another, I think, issue that's helping moving forward. So I'm trying to ease this baby formula crisis. So I recently spoke to the former associate commissioner of the FDA, and he essentially told me that the FDA dropped the ball on this issue. So moving forward, what do you think can be done to avoid such a crisis in the future? Is it about bringing more competition into the market? Is it about, having more regulatory inspections of these manufacturers? What's your take on this?
So I see this as kind of a twofold problem. And again, in the larger scale, you have one problem, which is the over-regulation. And in this one specific case, you have what at first would almost seem like the exact opposite of that, right? Which is a lack of enforcement. But it's not. I mean, like here's the thing, make a rule, enforce a rule, and then go from there. Don't make a whole bunch of rules, don't bother enforcing them, and go, well, we must need more rules. And that's, my take on this is, did the FDA drop the ball? It sure seems like it. But maybe the fact that the FDA had the ball to begin with was part of the problem. You've got this, allegedly the FDA had heard from a whistleblower from this major manufacturer that had shut down in February, Abbott Laboratories or Abbott US, in I think it was October, and nothing was done on it until after infants began getting sick and a few died, this year. So, look, if the FDA had said immediately when they got this report that, hey, we're, Abbott Labs is cutting corners on quality control, on safety policies, on their safety procedures, if they'd immediately investigated and then found, oh, you know what, you're right, maybe none of that would have happened to begin with. So on the other hand, though, none of the current testing has actually, that I've been able to see, actually linked any contaminated containers back to Abbott Labs. So, whether they were cutting corners or not, that may be a separate issue from whether or not they had contaminated food coming out. But If they cut corners, shame on them. If there was, in fact, a whistleblower report that the FDA ignored, shame on them. Isn't that ostensibly the mission of the FDA, to ensure that our food and medicine is safe? And and by the way, the Democrats push to fund the FDA with another, I think it's $28 billion. When in the history of bureaucracy has rewarding malfeasance, whether we're talking about actually just full-on corruption or just laziness, with more money actually fix the problem?
And what's interesting too is that the FDA, I mean, they knew about the problem back in January. That's when Abbott shut down its plant in Michigan, and they didn't come up with any plan whatsoever. They waited until absolute crisis, absolute shortage, to say, okay, fine, we should import more. We should ease the burden on all of these manufacturers. They didn't do anything about it. They waited until the last moment. So I think that was also
and that kind of segues us into the other problem there. The other problem is that regulation. Look, what's the FDA solution? Oh, we're going to lower regulations so that so that we can get more from overseas, mostly Europe. But the fact that you couldn't already just order baby formula from Europe was part of the problem to begin with. The FDA, and that's why I say this seems to be symptoms of a much more dangerous underlying infection. And that underlying infection is overregulation. Not on the safety side of like, hey, we need to make sure that our manufacturers have safe practices, but just on red tape for the sake of red tape is what it seems like.
Yep.
The EU tends to have a stricter safety regulation on food and drugs in the US. Yes. So how is it that we're saying, oh, that's not good enough? We can't sell our stuff in the EU, but their stuff ain't good enough for us either.
Exactly.
So and it's just a difference of a lot of it on baby formula is actually just a difference in the amount of iron that's used. But that's getting a little technical with it. But the fact that we only have a small handful of major manufacturers in the US, and that you can't legally have a manufacturer in Europe ship you baby formula, is part of the underlying problem behind this shortage. And then, of course, we have a shortage of everything thanks to the pandemic reaction. Mm-hmm. But parents have been trying to get American parents have been trying to get European formula for years. This isn't new. And in fact, I won't name the company. If you want to go find the company, it's not that hard. But there's actually a company in Europe where American parents can pay at a premium. It's 2 to 4 times as much as American formula, can buy formula from Germany or other countries in Europe. And then this company's employees will actually, they'll get it at the warehouse. And then they've got this kind of loophole in the import laws in America where the employee will send a package as an individual to the person in America. And so, it's not being shipped commercially. So it's kind of a gray area legally. And of course that's risky because A, you're spending a lot more, and B, if customs catches your package, you've just thrown that money away. But it's kind of funny. That's kind of funny. That's been going on since at least 2018, 2017, maybe. And it reminds me of a line from Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park where they say life finds a way, and it's liberty finds a way too.
So now switching gears to gasoline prices. A gallon of gas is now at a national average of $4.60. Every day seems to be hitting a new all-time high. And then the other fuel that is creating headaches for the broader economy is diesel, which also seems to be hitting near record highs also. So it seems the administration is doing 2 things. 1, releasing inadequate levels of supply, and 2, hoping conditions will blow over. So at this point of no return, is there really anything the government can do to bring down the price of either regular gasoline or diesel?
Yeah, so national average $4.60 a gallon for regular. I think it's $5.54 a gallon for diesel. Mm-hmm. In my own state, in Arkansas, we're looking at a statewide average of $4.12 a gallon for regular, $5.22 for diesel. But Californians are paying a little over $6 a gallon for regular, and like almost $6.60 for diesel or something like that. It's insane. It is bad. It's worse than it's ever been. Mm-hmm. But I don't really. This is kind of like the whole. It's kind of like a shortage issue with anything else. And it's like the baby formula shortage, for example. I don't think there is a point of no return. I think this is a matter of progressive regulations, statist regulations cause problems. And when we reverse that, we should see a reverse of that. So I mean, I think if the Biden administration reversed, well, let me do a little bit of quick math here, 100% of their energy policies, then we could go back. We'll start to see prices fall. Remember, the highest national average for gas for regular gasoline under Donald Trump's under the Trump administration, the whole time he was in office, was $2.90 a gallon.
The good old days. $2.90.
Yeah, right. And yeah, no doubt. And of course, the best Biden saw was about $2.50 a gallon, and we're talking about right in that transition period, and it immediately started coming up because we immediately saw these progressive energy policies. And by the way, and this is before Ukraine, of course, things got worse after Ukraine, but if you look at the rate of increase before the invasion in Ukraine and the rate of increase after, it's really not that big of a difference. Mm-hmm. So, yes, the fact that we're not getting the Russian oil is kind of hammering us a little bit, but really it's making less of a difference than just the Biden administration's energy policies. Yeah. So if we flash back to the Obama administration, we saw his highest national average per gallon was $3.90. So that's not far from where we are now, really. I mean, at least it's not far from where we were before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So, we've seen it before, and I think we'll see it again. Assuming, by the way, that any of us can afford to keep cars long enough for this to happen. And the same is true for diesel, which, by the way, and a lot, some people may not remember this, but diesel requires less refining than gasoline. And it was always, up until this modern age of government meddling, actually cheaper than gas.
Yeah, what's interesting is that if you look at the gap between gasoline and diesel, it's never been wider. This is the biggest gap in U.S. history because right now it's nearly 6 for diesel and then 4 something for gasoline. And the other contributing factor to the whole diesel prices are the lack of refineries. On the East Coast itself, there are less than 10 refineries. I mean, so many have shut down over the years. And nationwide, it's only 129 refineries. So of course you're going to have these, these massive price hikes in diesel. So before we let you go, just on the demand side of the whole energy file, consumers, they rely on their cars, especially you mentioned California. California, they have a terrible public transit system. A lot of people drive, throughout that entire state. So do you see consumers responding by driving less? I just read, this morning, for example, that many Americans still plan to travel for the Memorial Day long weekend. So do you see any numbers of consumers adapting, or is just, the basic economic principle of inelastic demand?
Right. So a little story time, right?
Sure.
So in my early 20s, I worked at a gas station. So I sold gas, cigarettes, and alcohol. And I will never forget the time I would see people come in and say, oh man, when this gets to $3 a pack, I'll quit smoking. And, or when beer gets to whatever a case, I'll quit drinking. Or, when gas hits $2 a gallon, I can remember people saying, when gas hits $2 a gallon, I'll start walking to work. Could you imagine, Andrew, if in the early 2000s, there was when gas hit $2 a gallon, that there was a massive gas boycott? You talk about two birds with one stone. We would have overnight, as if by magic, solved both the nation's fuel cost issue and obesity issue. but no, it doesn't happen. Look, you're not going to stop driving to work, right? I mean, and honestly, when you've only got 1 or 2 vacation, like 1 or 2 times a year when you can travel anyways, which is the case for the average American, if they even have that kind of vacation time, you're not going to give that up either. There's a lot of things that we as consumers will give up before we give up our ability to go make money and our ability to blow off a little steam. And whether that's visiting with family or going to the lake or whatever. Yeah, sure, joyriding, just filling up the tank for what it costs to go buy lunch and then just driving for the sake of driving. Yeah, that hasn't been a thing for like 20 years. But as far as are we going to see folks driving less? I really don't think so.
I'd like to thank James Fight for appearing on Swamponomics videocast. As Liberty Nation recently noted, the next major energy fiasco could be natural gas, as prices topped $9 on growing exports to Europe. Everywhere America turns, they are seeing a fire that needs to be put out, from the rising cost of apples and bananas to an intensifying scarcity of common goods. If this is the new normal, perhaps James Fight can develop a time machine from one of his favorite science fiction novels and take the world back to the ancient world of 2019. So that's it for me this week. Please read my full Swamponomics column every week on LibertyNation.com, and be sure to watch my other Swamponomics videocast interviews. Thank you.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it.